this is Rumor, and if you are getting deja vu and thinking for a second that you clicked on my previous video, I am not going over these decks again. I previously went through what was in this box, but this is the top box of what I keep next to my tarot table. What I'm focusing on today is the box beneath the box, which contains Lenormand playing cards and probably things I have forgotten about. Now, this is not my complete Lenormand collection. I have other decks that might be paired in little groupings where they thematically fit. Like, for example, off the top of my head, I'm thinking about my Clair de Lune Lenormand deck that I keep in a pouch for my moon decks when I do new moon and full moon readings. But this is probably the bulk of them in here. Not pretending to be super organized with how I chose what goes in here. It also is just, to be honest, a receptacle to store other irrelevant things too if I just needed the space. But to start out with, now this one actually did live in my Gothic pouch and probably should go back in there, but as I was accumulating more decks and running out of room, I don't know, I ended up yanking it out and throwing it back in here. So it's kind of a Gothic pouch honorable mention then. What are we doing here? Oh, okay. Excited. You get a choice between a couple of the cards, so that's what this was, along with the title card, the Victorian Gothic Lenormand, which I got on Etsy a while ago, and I've trimmed my version. There was sort of a brown border going around it, not like a sharp, crisp border. It's sort of blended into this artwork in that like muddied way, but I didn't like it. So I just trimmed it down to get it more to the crisper image. Yeah, so this obviously is one that I will pull out if I am using my more Gothic decks. I think it'll be great with the, oh gosh, I'm not going to remember the whole name, but the Madame Lydia Wilhelmina. I don't know. The tarot's macabre and of autumn scenes and blah, 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 blah. I don't remember. I will edit that in though. Once I do refresh my memory. But, you know, I could pull this one out with my Haunted House Tarot, my Horror Tarot, Bohemian Gothic Tarot. I've got the mini of that, and they definitely look really good together. So, as everyone always says, with Lenormand, doesn't matter. A letter is going to be a letter is going to be a letter. Doesn't matter what the artwork is, but I like when my cards match, and especially if I'm in this sort of spooky mood. Yes, so I love the backs of these, very Victorian Gothic indeed. Keep them in this little, when I've shared my what's in the bag videos before, I have had bigger pouches holding tarot decks. This is also Redbubble. This is like the smallest size zipper pouch that you can get. It's great for throwing a little Lenormand deck in, or like playing card size. And this is Winona Cookie, the same artist that does pretty much all the bags, maybe with the exception of one or two that I've shown in those videos. This one is actually Duck Soup. This is the artist that created the Trick or Tarot, and I think that this image is taken from, oh gosh, it's like Tarot Circus or something like that. Again, I'm gonna have to edit it. It's a deck, I have never had it. I don't really remember, but it's like a circus themed, like a vintage, old school circus themed deck. And in here I keep, this is the Mondacht Lenormand, and I use this one actually for my full moon readings, but I don't keep it in my moon bag just because I don't strictly use it for that. This has a beautiful vintage aesthetic that goes with a lot of my decks. So I keep it near the tarot table because definitely more so than the Victorian Gothic, this is one that lends itself to being pulled out on a day-to-day basis as it might suit particular deck du jour. But as you can see, just very basic images, lovely muted color tone. And it just has a real classic feel to it. Speaking of classic, Pixie's Astounding Lenormand. This one came in a tin. This one's really neat. This was my first Lenormand deck. And, okay, how do I want to do this here? I think this is very clever. This is all taken from Pamela Coleman Smith's artwork, but, you know, she obviously did not create a Lenormand deck herself. But those who did create this deck pulled from her artwork, from the RWS, but also other drawings that she had rendered, not related to the tarot deck. And basically they took elements and just fused them together or isolated them as necessary to convey the object at hand. So, and it's neat, whoa, gosh, it's been a while since I've used it and read it, but I believe the guidebook, excuse me, will indicate the image origins, and it will say where they pulled one or the other from if you're wanting to like tie it back with your RWS deck. So obviously this is a great Lenormand to accompany when you're using the RWS. So if I am pulling out my Centennial version, any version of the RWS that I have, this is the one that's going to pair with it. Speaking of deck pairings, this I got with the Golden Thread Tarot, which I do still have. I have been on the fence with that one a lot because I don't use it, but I've ultimately settled on I like it enough to keep it. I have pulled it out of purgatory and it continues to sit unused in my collection, but I still like it. I don't know why. I don't want to give it up. And I had bought this corresponding Golden Thread Lenormand deck to go with it. It has this little fold out explanation of how to read Lenormand as well as the meanings. It is the same recycled plastic as the Golden Thread Tarot, which makes it an absolute joy to shuffle. An absolute joy. I mean, riffle shuffling specifically is just awesome. They're so nice and bendy. So anyway, the exact same style as the Golden Thread. So it's just an automatic pairing. I have also pulled this out though if I've used other decks that have a black background or I don't know, some other element that seems like would go well with this, but yeah, so even if I'm not using the Golden Thread, I can still pull this out. And I remember studying Lenormand, like properly studying. If the Pixie's Astounding Lenormand was my first deck, I feel like this was the first deck that I really studied with, it's really nice, like the simplicity of the images. This really helped with like not getting too much into trying to pull something intuitively from the Lenormand image and just keeping it strictly and starkly to the object at hand. So it's really nice. And if I were ever to rehome my golden thread, I would do so with this. Keep them together. This is purely for storage. When I did my tour of the tarot table, I showed how on my windowsill I have the Cosmovisions Oracle deck along with the Green Glyphs Lenormand. So otherwise that would probably live in here with my other Lenormand decks. But no, this is just an empty box and I just had space for it. So I put it here. No real rhyme or reason to that. Okay. Well, speaking of green glyphs, also storing the box for that here. Oh my gosh. Oh, here we go. So this is just the Lenormand. I know that there is a whole like set coming out or has come out with the whole shebang, tarot, oracle. I think that is so awesome. So awesome. I'm definitely considering that, but so yeah, this is just the box and book for the green glyphs that I keep in here, and then just the extra cards again where you get choices, especially for like the signifier cards, you get options, which is nice. Oh, for crying out loud. It's like it does fit, it's just that it fits too well. It's too perfect that it's not always easy to get back in. But as you might see here, I pulled out, these are, oh, well, you know what? No, before I get into those, sorry. Let me finish with Lenormand. So this little pouch is where I keep my Story in Color Lenormand, made by none other than Kelly Fitzgerald of The Truth in Story. And this is also a wonderful deck to have on hand by the table because it looks so pretty with so many decks. And specifically, I have used this a lot with the Spacious Tarot and Margaret Peterson. Just with the coloring, and especially with Margaret Peterson, it's really cool to pair such an abstract deck with such an abstract Lenormand, where Kelly approached this not depicting the actual physical objects, but more so their essence as she perceives it through her art here with color and shape. And it's really cool. It's such a neat way to work with the Lenormand and the energies of these, which even more so, like what I was saying before with the golden thread Lenormand, you're trying to not get so intuitive with the images. I mean, this really like pares it down to like, don't even think about the literal object, just like the essence of what that is supposed to mean. And I guess there is an intuitive aspect to that. It's very difficult to look at color and especially in the abstract like this and not sort of have some sort of instinctive response to that and intuitive rendering as to how you're interpreting. But that's neat. I think it's nice to bring that layer into it actually, as much as it's not supposed to matter about the image. Sometimes, and is it just me? But sometimes I question, why not? Why not? I mean, I'm not a straight up Lenormand reader, so I'm sure that people who are like super into it, doing grand tableaus left and right, are probably audibly gasping that I said that. But as someone who doesn't use Lenormand in that way, I mean, I would like to work up to doing a grand tableau sometime. I have definitely done like the 9-card spread, but predominantly I'm just pulling them out in pairs or 3s, and at most 5 typically, just to supplement a tarot reading. I consider tarot to be my primary divination system for as much as I have learned and do use other systems like casting and so forth. But being a casual Lenormand user, it has kind of made me wonder, like, well, can I break the rules with it a little bit if I wanted to, if that's what works for me? So anyways, I didn't mean to get all on that whole thing, but it's just these images are like too beautiful to not work with, I feel. So there we go, Story in Color Lenormand, that lovely color splash in this box. Okay, so now what I'm getting at, these are my playing cards, but of these 3 playing card decks, only one is actually a straight up playing card deck. I got the Contraband. I just think it's nice to have a good old fashioned, let's see, these are my jokers, etc. there, but a good old fashioned playing card deck. And I just, oh, I really love the style of this one. I don't know how well it'll show, but look at like the little etchings. It gives a depth to these hearts and spades and clubs and diamonds. Very stripped down of color otherwise, but it's just really neat styling. I like it. It just feels very vintage and classic. And oh, gotta love a good old linen playing card stock. So I don't do a lot of playing card divination in itself, but I do dabble in it sometimes in a very simple way. Like I approach the Lenormand mainly as a supplement to a larger tarot reading maybe, but that's something I am interested in working with more though. But speaking of tarot, this is just such a perfect marriage of the playing card and the tarot system. Again, just have some of these extra cards. So the Arcana playing cards, they also come, this was one sample from the lighter version, but obviously I've got the black. And it's such a neat, like, nod to the origins of tarot in a playing card deck. And it basically takes the standard playing card deck as we know it with the Jack, King, and Queen, but then adds in a page and the major arcana. So these are all, this is all shuffled in, but you can see there are the major arcana cards. So it takes it from that 52 playing card deck up to 78 card tarot deck. And then minors, you do get the nod to the tarot element. So the spades correspond with the swords. So you'll see a sword here. The hearts associated with the cups. So there is your cup. The clubs. There's your wand. And then the diamonds associated with the pentacles. So you could strip out the major arcana and the extra pages and just use this as a playing card deck. play a game of solitaire, do straight up playing card divination, whatever. But then you put it all together, you've got a tarot deck, pip style, and these images are beautiful. I love a vintage look, very traditional style etchings, so incredibly detailed. It's just lovely. So I love this. And it's a great travel size. And again, especially if you're traveling, you know, you can do both tarot and just be able to play a card game with it. So it's really, really practical that way too. So there's my Arcana playing cards. Oops, and I left these out. And finally, speaking of James Eads earlier, this is the Open Portals playing card / oracle deck. Now, I had gotten both this dark version and the light version. What am I doing here? I divided these up in a certain way. Oh, I remember why. Never mind. But anyways, I had the light version of this too, which I rehomed, and I rehomed it with the instructions for how to use these cards for a playing card game that James developed. Honestly, I read through the instructions and it seemed very complicated to me and I didn't really get it. And honestly, I didn't know anyone who would sit and actually play it with me. So as much as I thought that that was really cool and I wanted to give the game aspect of it a go, I just really never had the opportunity or inclination to do it. So that was easy enough to give up those instructions, but then also gave it with the blurbs on each of the cards, how to interpret them if you're using this as an oracle deck. So it's such a neat, triple layer to this deck. And sorry, I'm keeping these separated for my own personal reasons, but you know, you could just use it as playing cards. You can use it all together for this special game that James developed, or you can just use it as an oracle deck. And so I have settled on oracle deck, and I did take pictures of the blurbs before I rehomed them with the other deck so that I could still reference that. But, you know, also challenging myself to use these intuitively too. But it is nice to know like what the intention is, you know, the creator's intention behind these different portals. So I almost rehomed this too because it's not something I use really often, but like I have used it and I have liked it and I want to continue to use it. And I also just got recently got the Lenormand Tarot, which looks so awesome with this just aesthetically. And I feel like this is an oracle deck that matches its energy in a way that my other oracles don't. So even for that alone, just that pairing, it's worth it to me to keep. But it's also just like, it's such a unique thing. Like so much thought went into this. And I'm trying to remind myself why I divided it this way. I think I basically isolated the portals. But as you can see, you've got your playing card associations here. You've got your hearts, spades, clubs, and diamonds. They're numbered. And then you have James's original artwork for each. And for these minors, then they are depicted, or they are depicting a certain portal. And, you know, by that, you can just take it like conceptually what it's telling you. But I think it would be really neat to use this more as opening portals, so to speak, to go into, to kind of usher in then the world of that tarot reading. Within what realm am I entering as I'm doing the corresponding tarot reading? I figuratively speaking, of course. But then what I separated out were the court cards and the jokers, but every card in this deck has a place and purpose within it. So the jokers are these different myths. And then I took the aces out too, I guess. Oh, they represented different types of magic. Natural magic, light magic, spirit magic. And then the courts, I believe, are gods and goddesses. So I separated everything out because in trying to like find use for this deck in a way that I resonate with, I wanted to, instead of shuffling everything all together and just randomly pulling apart, I really did want to work with the structure of it and kind of pull these things out. Like if these are specific energies that I'm looking for, kind of pulling it out as like a signifier to have there, lending its energy. And like I said, having the portal to kind of open the door into whatever I'm looking to explore with the tarot reading. And yeah, I think it could just be really cool used that way. So then, once again, that was the Open Portals, I think Dark Side version is what it's called. And that's what's in the box, folks. I'll be returning these to my tarot table right beside them. They're just there and I can grab as I need them. By no means does this complete my collection. Again, that was not the full Lenormand, just like this was not the balance of my tarot collection. There is another big box over there actually, which I've been sorting through, pulling decks for another video that I want to do. And I've got another little box of oracles over there as well. And there's even cards and stuff in that box. And oh my gosh, folks, so many boxes. But for another day, for now, this is what's in the box. The box says, beside my tarot table. Thank you so much for joining me. And let me know if you yourself dabble in playing card divination, Lenormand. What are your thoughts on those other systems relative to the tarot? Do you mix everything up in the way that I do? Are you hardcore one camp versus another? Are you appalled by anything I have said about my use of Lenormand and playing cards? I would love to hear it. And thank you so much, as always, for joining me today. Bye.